Ignition liftoff. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have liftoff.
Have you ever wondered how to turn a powerful personal brand into a lasting legacy? Well, today we're joined by the incredible Lorna Luxe, who shares how. From her early days as a flight attendant to becoming one of the most influential voices in fashion and beauty, her journey is one of resilience, reinvention, and creativity. So let's find out why she's a lady who launched. Right, before we get into it, if you like this episode, which I know you're going to, please don't forget to like and subscribe and to share it to your group chat. I always like to start these interviews now with Rosé. That's a new discovery. But going all the way back, finding about you, who you were before we knew you.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your upbringing and how those early years looked to you.
Okay. Well, I want to start by saying that I feel like I always talk about being quite humble beginnings when I grew up. And every time I talk about it, my mum gets the ump and says, why are you making us sound like we had nothing? Because we were all right.
Yeah.
But I think like my earliest kind of memory is my dad leaving. So when I was about 4, I remember my dad and my mum he came to the driveway and I was crying, chasing after him.
Oh, God.
And he kind of left us. And my mum was like, I can't afford this house anymore. We lived in a very cute little semi-detached in Sale in Manchester. And so we had to move in initially with my nana and granddad into the council house that she'd grown up in. And it was a bit of a come down for me. Even at 4, I understood that I'd moved from, kind of all right place to somewhere that wasn't quite so nice.
And you probably were reading the room around you, so not maybe just the home, but like the whole kind of separation and...
Oh, massively. Like I get PTSD from it now. I've got a massive issue around rejection, for example.
Really?
I feel like all my relationships, I like to keep a little bit of a guard up. And I think it all stems from that kind of daddy issues.
Yeah, probably. I've got a few of those too.
Yeah.
Gosh, let's not get on the wine too much. We'll be really going to town on those. But around you, was there anybody that you kind of looked to? Was that your mum? Was that your grandparents? In that kind of like entrepreneurial way?
No, not really. My mum was very ambitious, so she was working full time, but because my nana and granddad would look after me, she went to uni and she got educated.
Amazing.
So that was I suppose in a way that was quite good to see.
Yeah.
To get out of it. But she didn't do that to get out of where we were. She just did that to better the life we had.
Right.
But I always knew that as soon as I could go to uni, as soon as I could do those things, that I was getting out. I wasn't ever going to come back to Manchester.
Wow.
So I always looked at my childhood as like, I can't wait to leave home, I picked the furthest uni away from home.
But and why do you think? Because the situation that had happened and why do you think you were desperate to be somewhere so different?
I think because everything around me was so people didn't leave the town, didn't leave the village, and there was no excitement.
Okay.
But I feel like I was very impressionable. So I'm showing my age now, but I was like 14, 15 when like Sex and the City came out.
Wow.
And
what a time.
There were shows like Queer as Folk where you were seeing these people that were just living these quite exciting lives. And I wanted a bit of that. Yes. And I was determined that I wouldn't get that whilst I was living at home with my nana and granddad.
You almost didn't want that normality.
Yeah, I almost craved being a bit different to everyone else.
Right.
Which is exactly what I do now.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have a normal job, but, there's lots of influencers, right? There's loads of us.
Now.
And
we'll get on to that. There wasn't when you were influenced,
No.
At the start of your career. So you picked a uni that was far away from home. Where was it?
Went to Newcastle.
Okay.
Newcastle?
Newcastle.
I loved it.
Did you?
Absolutely loved it. Didn't really go for the degree, just went for the piss up and the fun. Literally loved it.
True to form.
True to form.
And what were you studying?
Initially I went to do music and then I changed to music and English.
Okay.
And I did all right with that. My mum was an English teacher eventually.
Right.
So I kind of had that background. But piano, because I was a pianist, so I loved piano. That was my escapism growing up. But as soon as you've got to do it where you've got to rely on like being questioned on it and it's important that you've got to get your tests right, I just switched off and I hated it.
Almost like you like the creativity of it, but not the pressure.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy it at all. So actually, I haven't really played the piano since uni.
Wow.
which is really
So
sad.
if you had a piano in front of you, how would you? Is it like riding a bike or no?
Yeah, I feel like I could bang out like Elton John, Benny and the Jets. I know the chord structure.
Right.
And I could probably do some Chopin because I used to play a lot of Chopin. But I don't think I'd be a great pianist now. Whereas I was really good.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
But the kind of like the structure and the studying put you off.
Yeah, I hated it. I didn't like I remember my lecturer telling me that my hands were too small, that I was never going to be a classical pianist. And I was like, hang on, I'm only in like first year. Like, setting me up to
Still
fail.
going to grow, thank you very much.
But it was like, I think for me, being told I can't do something either makes me go, right, I'm going to do it better.
Yeah.
Or I just go, oh, I'm not bothering then.
Okay.
And that's like my mentality.
But that's probably because the passion isn't there.
Yeah, maybe.
I feel like if you've got passion behind you, I can tell that you would really,
Yeah,
that
I'd be
would
like,
take over.
I'm determined.
So what happens? So you are at uni, you do okay, you then find yourself as cabin crew.
So I had to go home. I remember Mum saying, you can't stay in Newcastle. I'm not going to pay for you to live in Newcastle.
Right.
You haven't got a job. I did work at Curry's, but that was only 2 days a week. And I only worked at Curry's because I liked all the boys, because it was quite a masculine environment.
Yes.
So I was like, I quite like this, they're flirty. But I just remember crying going past the Angel of the North. And it was like, you know,
What,
the Lighthouse.
leaving?
Yeah, the Lighthouse family was playing. Lost in Space or whatever. And I just got that memory of feeling like, oh my God, my life's over now, because I've had so much fun and now I've got to go back to Manchester.
Was it almost like a little bubble for you?
Oh, yeah. It was just, I loved it. And then I saw an ad in the back of Cosmo.
Right.
And my flatmate at the time when I was in Newcastle was like, you need to kind of get a grip now and like get a proper job. Stop going for stuff like this. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to apply. So I applied for that. And then my mum paid for me to fly down to Gatwick to do the interview because I was pretty skint. I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And it was like X Factor. So through the day, they would split the groups into two, and one group got sent home and one group stayed. And the group would get smaller and smaller and smaller. So it started at like 40 people in the morning. And then there was 3 of us at the end. And I just remember being like ringing my mum after that interview and going, I've nailed that. I've got that.
Really?
And then I did. I got the job.
And what do you think you loved about it? Like when you went for that interview, did you instantly think, I want this now?
So I didn't even care about the job. I didn't really know what the job was because I hadn't really flown much as a kid. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea really that it was customer service focused.
Right.
And I didn't really have any, other than Curry's, I didn't really have much customer service training. Mm-hmm. But what I realised that day was that I was like, this is my way out. I can go around the world now and I can be whoever I want to be. And you can kind of like write your own ticket. Yeah. And there was girls in the interview that had obviously applied multiple times and hadn't got through. There was one girl who'd been going for the interviews for 6 years.
Oh my god!
She was really like obsessed to be a Virgin girl. And I just
so
thought
it was Virgin that you were cabin
Virgin.
crew for?
And I just thought, you know what? This is a pretty cool job. And if I get it, I've got to take it.
Yes.
So yeah, I got it.
So you then start, and one of my good friends growing up was cabin crew for Virgin.
Okay. I wonder if I might know her.
Jess McGinley.
I do know the name.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I bet you do. I'll show you a picture after.
Yeah.
But I just remember her saying things to us like, girls, anyone fancy a LA with me on Friday? And I'd be like, what? Like, that's a thing? Like, she just seemed to have the best fun. Like, she's still there. She's still there, like, on and off now.
Yeah.
And I just remember being almost at the time so envious because it seemed like she just lived this life. She would fly to LA, for example, have like a few days or a couple of days in the sun and doing loads of fun things and then fly back home. Yeah. And it just honestly, it looked like the dream.
And I think it was the dream for me because when I was so young, like 21, 22, you know, you want to go out with the girls and get drunk. And this was a way to do it and get paid for it.
Yes.
So in that sense, it really was the dream. I think my downfall was that because it was all long haul, you were always down route. So there's an element of loneliness Because you're not going to get on with every crew you fly with.
Yeah, it's not like doing it with your
Yeah.
girlfriend. Yeah.
And there were some crews that were like, yeah, I'm not going to, they're called Delsey diners, like they'd pack sandwiches in their bags and they didn't want to spend any money down route. Because the suitcases are by Delsey. So you'd call them a Delsey diner.
Delsey diner.
And you'd be like, oh, there's loads of Delsey diners on this crew. Like, I'm not going to see anyone when I get there.
Right, okay.
And that's like, it's nice to be in LA, but when you're on your own, it's a bit lonely.
Yes.
So I kind of struggled with that a little bit. And I think as well, because of the night flights, I was boozing a lot. So I'd put on a bit of weight and I kind of was quite conscious of my weight. So I was always trying to like undereat or like, you know, I had definitely eating disorders throughout my flying career.
Right.
It was very disordered, like a fractured lifestyle.
Okay, what, like in its sort of entirety
Yeah,
for you?
it was just a bit, you know, I'm sure not everyone had that experience. But for me, I was living in Brighton. You know, I was out when I was at home, I was out when I was down route. So I wasn't really, I was a grown-up, but it was not a real life for me.
Almost another bubble for a while.
It really was a bubble.
And so how long, so that was, you were 21?
Joined at 21 and I did 10 years.
Wow.
So I think I left when I was about 30, 31. So it's a long time.
And what was the decision to leave?
I kind of got pushed, if you like.
Okay.
Because what had happened for me was that my disordered eating had got so bad that I was really underweight, and I kind of spoke to my manager, my line manager. I was like, oh, I'm not really feeling that great. I need therapy and all this jazz. And they kind of grounded me. They were like, you can't fly. You're not well. And I was really underweight. So then I was like, I can't do that. You know, and it's like going back to my childhood, going to the council house. It was like, I can't go from being in the air to being on the ground.
What, that felt like a sort of another downgrade to you?
Yeah. And I was like, I can't do that. And I remember John saying, what you need to do is get well, and like, you probably just need to leave. So I left.
Wow.
I left my job, which actually was like leaving my identity. Because like, who am I now? I'm not Lorna the Virgin girl. I've got no job. I'm 31.
And that becomes a big, you know, we say this a lot, that like whether that's founding a business or working for a big company, however that looks, your job does become a real identity.
Oh my God, it was everything to me. And also, I live in Brighton. Like, I'm surrounded by loads of other people from Virgin. Like, that's embarrassing. They're going to ask me what I'm doing now, and I had nothing to say because I had no job. John had been married a couple of times before, so he was, you know, he wasn't wealthy.
So so in this point, in this timeline, where have you met your husband, John?
I met John like maybe 3 years before.
Right, okay.
And I think my eating disorder got really bad after I got married.
That's so interesting.
Because I think that control thing of like getting married, I thought everything's going to be hunky-dory now. I'm on the home straight.
Because a lot of people lose on that, where they call it the wedding diet, don't they? Whether that's intentional or not. A lot of people drop pre-wedding. But also, when you're planning something as big as a wedding, there is quite a lot, the control freak can really take over. So I suppose if you've not got that to be in control of now, if it's a control thing with, correct me if I'm wrong, with eating disorders, a lot of the time it is having that thing that you can control, right?
It was all about
maybe
control.
It passed over to that.
And I think it was so much about control. I'll be honest, I didn't plan any of our wedding. So John did everything, even down to the bouquet.
Really?
The only thing I was involved with was buying the dress.
Wow.
And me and him went and picked it together. But I did think once I've married John, everything's going to click into place, and it just didn't. It was like everything was the same.
Right,
and I
so you'd almost put, it's so common to do that, isn't it? You've sort of put, I suppose, a bit of a mark in the sand to say, by this point,
I'm like, this is it now.
Everything's going to unfold and it's going to be what I'm thinking it's going to be in my mind. And then when you get there, well, you hear it about people when they like decide to sell their company, or they go and they ring the bell and they're like, on this day I'm going to feel elated and I'm going to feel epic and everything I've ever dreamed of. And actually it happens and you're like, oh.
I didn't feel sad. I just gradually got less and less confident, less interested. When I was doing trips on Virgin flights, I wouldn't ever go down route. I would literally get to my room, and I was exercising, and I just got fixated on the wrong things. I really got into a bit of a spiral, and it was good that I left Virgin, because it gave me the kick up the arse to do, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And I had the luxury of the fact that John could afford for me to not work, but we were getting skinter and skinter by the month, because he was having to pay all the bills. And so at that point, he was like, you've got to get a job. You've got nothing to talk about. And when I met you, you had loads of things to talk about.
And go back to when you met. When you met, is it right you met on a flight?
I didn't meet him on a flight, but his mate was crew.
Right.
And so then when I'd done a trip with his mate, and then when I saw his mate out in Brighton, he was with John.
Okay.
So it was nice because it was like, it's quite a nice way to meet someone,
and
I
quite
think.
familiar.
Yeah, and it's safe.
Yes, yes.
Because otherwise, he's a lot older than me, and I would have been like, who's this creepy old guy, like, chatting me up? But because I had that, like, connection.
Almost like that vouch.
Yeah.
He was vouching for him.
And his mate Steve was like, clearly really wanted us to be like set up, and he was going to me like, he's got a bit of money, John, like, he wouldn't get in there. And as if I was like some money grabbing, you know what I mean? But it was just, that was great. Like, I definitely don't regret meeting John. That was probably the best bit.
Of course.
But I really think looking back, I wish I could have done that better. Wish I could have not screwed up so mightily.
Yeah, but you say that, but you kind of need those moments in life sometimes, as much as at the time it feels like, why is this happening? Why, it's not a nice place to be. You're looking back with hindsight, which is always a wonderful thing, isn't it? But that will have moulded who you are now, and you'll approach situations differently now because of that time.
Yeah, I think that it made me nicer being poorly, because I think when you've been that low, you can kind of see other people's weaknesses a bit easier, because they show, once you've had that, it sounds a bit deep, doesn't it? But like when you've been through trauma, you recognise it in other people.
Yes.
And it maybe made
a bit
me
more personable.
Yeah, and I think I was a bit hard and a bit kind of like flashy in my 20s. In my 30s, I was a bit softer and a bit more, okay, like read the room, let's just see how you take people, see how you find people.
And there's a lot more than surface level.
Yeah.
I think you do realise that when you sort of enter your 30s too. Like it's, I was in a girl band for my 20s, and everything was showy and it was very surface level. And then actually you're like, God, real life stuff happens.
Yeah, it does.
And I think it takes time and growth and maturity sometimes to see that.
Massively for me anyway, definitely.
So John then encourages you to leave. You're not sure what you're going to do. How do you then... I mean, it's so interesting because now being an influencer is quite an obvious choice. Like I hear like my younger cousins talk, and they're like, I'm going to be an influencer when I'm older. And it's now something which is so brilliant because it's opened kind of a land of opportunity for so many other people that might be creative or might... however that looks, but didn't kind of have their place to fit. But at the time, Instagram and social media, it was just something we were starting to use and learn about. I don't think anybody actually knew there was kind of a career or a job role to sort of
I knew
take
it was
on.
going to be a job straight away.
Did you?
Yeah.
So tell us, how do you go from leaving job to having an account that was working for you?
Well, I did get a job in the end.
Right.
I went to Rocket St George. I had an interview with them
yes.
to do I can't remember what the job was now. It was like PR or something I was completely not qualified for. And I drove to their warehouse in Ditchling, which is in Sussex. And I was like, well, this doesn't look like the website, because I thought that their boozy, sexy website would be the same as. And obviously, it was just a real working business. This was great for me. Good experience.
Smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, it really was smoke and mirrors. And they were like, we like you. We were like, you clearly can't do the job that you've applied for. But we've got someone off in the summer holidays. Do you want the job? And I was like, yeah, go on then. I've got nothing else to do. And I used to drive an hour there and an hour home.
Right.
And it was just a brilliant year for me because, I used to watch Jane take photos, make these, the corner of a kind of warehouse into this magical place selling product. So that I would go home and do that in my house. And that's how Instagram started for me.
Wow.
I was like, well, they've got Instagram. I could do a little Instagram. So I had my own it wasn't interiors, but, taking arty shots of the dog and putting my dog in a Louis Vuitton Neverfull and taking a photo of his head. Because I had nothing else to do. I didn't really have a social life because I didn't eat. I was still struggling with my food.
Right.
And they were quite maternal, and they're both mums. So I really think they looked after me as well, which was good.
So you then start, like you say, this is more of a kind of hobby than it is.
Big time hobby.
Yeah.
But through that, I started to connect with other people because I was sat at home every night. I would reply to all my messages, all my comments, and I started to build a bit of a crew of friends, some of whom I'm still mates with now.
Love that.
And this was back in the day where there was a lot of Instagram clubs, which sounds a bit...
No, yeah.
Sounds a bit, I don't know, naff now, but there was one called We Love to Brunch. Mm-hmm. And it was 3 girls who'd got together. They loved like aesthetics and they loved coffee. And so they organised these like weekend meetups.
Oh, that's so nice.
So it was like a hashtag, and we'd all go to like a specific coffee shop where we'd all take pictures of our coffee and we'd all natter and meet each other.
You're so right. There was such a wave of like a coffee on a table in a shop being like the aesthetic. And then it changed to like an avo on toast.
Yep.
Like, there was a thing to know like, oh, she's a girly.
Yeah.
She had a cute coffee and a notepad.
It was like almost I was pretending to be somebody that I didn't even eat. And I was taking photos of avocado on toast. I didn't drink coffee, but I was taking pictures of coffee. But that wasn't what was good for me. It was good to get out of the house, to meet people from different walks of life.
Yeah.
That had totally different things going on, that didn't know anything about me.
Yes.
That would just accept me for who I was, what I was about at that time.
See, it goes back to what you were saying before. You could reinvent yourself when you become a cabin crew and write your own ticket.
Yeah.
There's a theme here.
There's a massive theme. And I loved it. And actually, a lot of the people that I met through We Love to Brunch, some of whom have got millions of Instagram followers now, they're like massively successful, but we've all stayed mates.
That's so nice.
And we have nothing in common. Like, there's one guy who now photographs cars and he travels all around the world doing that. But, I remember walking through like the heath with him, taking photos of trees. So it's like, you have those it was poignant, that period, because it really did, that's when I grew as well.
Right.
Because I really understood the power of community.
Yeah.
That it wasn't just about taking good photos. That would only get you so far. You had to actually have a network.
You're right. And I think only now in 2025 are brands, influencers, people really understanding what community means and how that looks. So what sort of period of time are we talking here? Like in terms of years?
We're talking probably, let's say I kicked off Instagram 2013, 14.
Right.
I would say that 14 to 16, where there was no commerciality.
Yeah.
I wasn't working with any brands whatsoever. But what I was doing was building my own brand. And that line in Lorna Luxe. Luxe, by the way, was my number plate. And Lorna was gone. And I was like, what can I be? And the girls in the office at Rocket St George were like, well, just do Luxe, because we all call you Luxie because of your plate.
I love it.
So that's where that came from.
So when I first I've followed you for a very long. I would actually like to get my Instagram up. So, it says how many, since you've followed this person since 20, whatever. When I first followed you, what I really remember is that I didn't see your face.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, there's this girl that I follow. And I remember I remember you had these pair of jeans once, and I was like desperate for these pair of jeans. And like you had like a pair of Louboutins with them. And I remember like the angles would all be from sort of like above. And you were just a great tan.
Yeah, I always had a tan.
These are things that I really remember. But I didn't know who you were. Now I feel like following you now as a new follower, instantly you know who you are because you talk every day. But there was a period of time where we didn't really see you as much in terms of like the feed. It was more like aesthetic, arty pics of your outfit and stuff.
It was like a trend, I suppose. I definitely think there was an element of protecting myself, that if it was too vulnerable, people wouldn't want it.
Really?
So I feel like that hidden chop it, but also for me, it was the chest fizz really took off around 2017, 18. And that was a business decision, because the best way to sell clothes is for the person looking at it to imagine that it's them. And so removing my head removed that personality.
Yes.
I'm really focused on the outfit. And, that really did well for me. I remember like the Times wrote an article about it, about the chest fizz. And they quoted me.
So what do you call it again? A chest fit?
Yeah, because it was like a selfie, but it was my chest. It literally it became like a hashtag.
I've never heard that before.
I know. This was like
chest
a thing.
fit?
Yeah.
Wow, I just thought that was like your thing.
It was just, I think I was the first person. There was me. There was a girl in Australia who, as soon as she clocked I was doing it as well, she blocked me.
Oh my gosh.
I actually ended up on a press trip with her about 2 years ago. That was funny.
Stop.
But there was maybe...
What happened to women supporting
I know,
women?
yeah. I think having met her now, I think, there was other things going on.
Okay, fine.
She seemed a bit vulnerable.
Okay,
But I just remember there was maybe 2 or 3 people. But remember, 2 years later, there was 2 or 3 million people doing that. So it was just about getting a trend and jumping on it.
Oh, and you, like, for me, that's like...
Yeah.
Like, you coined that. That's yours.
You kind of have to do that with all social media. Like, my big thing, I always say this all the time, is if you can't be different, be better. And if you can't be better, be different.
Correct.
So for me, I was always being, better in my head. I thought I was always doing better, trying to be better. But as soon as something got too big, I needed to pivot. And pivoting's really, like the Madonna, reinventing herself. It's really key to reinvent yourself.
Yes, to keep it moving. So you start all of this, and this is, I suppose you're getting that organic growth, right?
Yeah.
It's happening. You've
Yeah.
got, as you said, you've got the community behind you. When do brands really start to engage with you? When do you feel that Instagram really moved there?
It was late for me. I think I had about 500,000 followers before I really started to get paid for anything.
Right.
And I didn't realise you could get paid.
By the way, that's a lot of followers
Yeah, it was.
for it to be at that point.
Yeah. I didn't have management. I remember I got my manager around 500,000.
Wow.
And she was like studying what I'd been doing so far, and was like, yeah, you've had a few bits of paid jobs, but we need a bit more consistency. What do you want to do? She was like, what do you actually want to do? Let's reverse engineer it. And I was like, well, I want my own business. And she was like, well, you've got your own business. And I was like, all right, well, I'd quite like my own brand.
Yeah.
She was like, but you are your own brand. And it was kind of like, oh yeah, I can work with this. And that was kind of like a light bulb moment for me, because I thought, actually, rather than trying to aspire to be someone else, maybe I should just knuckle down and focus on who I am, and let's
work backwards from there.
and let's work it from there.
So, do you remember that first brand, that first job?
There were two that are significant for me. One was it was a bikini brand, Triangle.
Oh yeah.
And they used to send everyone a free bikini. And obviously I followed a lot of like micro influencers. We were all growing together, and I was the only one that hadn't been sent a bikini.
Oh, okay. So that was that became a thing.
And I was like, everyone's flat laying their bikinis. I've not had one.
No one's offered me a bikini yet.
And then eventually they slid into my DM. So I was like, that was a success moment for me. And I think the second one was that I got paid 300 quid to wear a snowy jacket, and I had a snowy trip coming up.
Okay.
And I had to give it back afterwards. And it was like I don't know what the brand was. I couldn't tell you. But
Almost
it was
like a loan.
Yeah, it was like a loan, like a quilted jacket, and I was buzzing that I'd been paid 300 quid to post on Instagram.
But I do think at this point, if you now everybody, that is a strategy for people. Create an Instagram, try and get a crew behind you, and get paid work from doing what you love. But back then, the concept of being paid to throw something on, something that you would want to buy yourself anyway, that kind of is other. I remember when the first thing happened for me, I was like, what?
Yeah.
I would have bought that.
Yeah.
Like, someone's going to offer me money to put it, like, it's kind of at the time, it was a really strange concept to get your head around.
And it wasn't my world, remember, so I didn't understand about PR and marketing.
Yes.
So I couldn't understand how do they benefit from this? I didn't know my own value, because you couldn't see the back end back then. There was no stats, was there? Not like there is now.
Yeah, you're so right. And also, now you're where you are, obviously your contracts would include knowing what targets you're going to hit and when you hit them, where there's a lot of kind of trickery that brands could do with keeping that from you and be like, yeah, it's selling all right, but actually you've completely sold them out or whatever it is. I want to talk about, because this kind of snowballed, right? So we have these moments, you have these brand trips that then you get invited on. I suppose you can really see that, okay, I'm getting asked to the events, I'm getting sent the Triangle bikini, I'm doing, it kind of snowballs from there on. I want to talk to you about your influence affecting other people's business and the people calling the Lorna Luxe effect. Because I've always known that when I've worked with brands, even when like I do edits myself, you'll always be on the list of like, we'd love to get Lorna Luxe in it, or I know how much you are like a hot ticket to brands. We had gorgeous Amy Smale on the podcast, who we all love, and she told us you posting her blazer genuinely changed the trajectory of her brand at such an early stage. Having that kind of that power, and this wasn't something that was conscious for you. Like, how does that make you feel? Because the way that she and I know you're friends now, which is so lovely, but the way that she speaks about you is so complimentary, and she's really honest about it, which I also think is nice, because she's meeting you in the same place where she's like, you have absolutely changed this. How does that make you feel?
I feel as though it was a joint effort, really, because she created a great blazer. If the product was crap, it wouldn't have done so well.
Yeah,
I
but it
just
would
had
have been
the
a great
vehicle for it.
blazer that nobody
Yeah, this is true.
knew about at that point because you hadn't
Yeah.
have put it on their radar.
Yeah, and to be honest, I struggle with that of like being like, oh yeah, no, I'm just great, aren't I? Because it doesn't make sense to me because my success is based on my community, right? So I've built a community of people that have all got the same taste. So me sharing that product, that blazer, which is a great blazer, was right up my community's alley. It was our taste at that time.
Yes.
So she fulfilled the need that we had as a group. And that's why it did well because we all looked at it and went, yeah, we'll have a bit of that.
Yes.
And we all bought the blazer. But there'll be as many people I've maybe done that for. I'm sure there's many that I haven't. And so I always have to balance it. Like, don't believe your own hype is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and of course, like you say, there are some things, and I suppose everybody will have that you're following really engage with, and then some maybe not so much. Maybe that isn't for your community.
And it happens.
Yeah.
I'm only as good as like my last set of stories, put it that way.
Yes.
And some things pop off. And you're like, flipping it, didn't expect that.
If we'd have known that, we'd have done that ages ago.
And like crazy stuff, like, I've talked about my hair a lot. Like, I've got alopecia and it's embarrassing for me, but I do as much as I can for it. And I got us a discount code for the hairbrush that I use, which is, a really good hairbrush. But I thought there'll be 3 or 4 people might buy this hairbrush that has got the same problem as me.
Yeah.
But the swipe ups were crazy. And I was like, there was just thousands and thousands of swipe ups. I was like, flipping out, like people... This is my people, and that's why it's done well because it's the community I've built.
Exactly that, and the way that they engage with you is genuine.
Yeah, 100%.
and you can really see, and I've said this to you before, when your stories, like I sit there and sometimes I'm like, in the morning I see you doing your makeup or telling us what you're using, and I'm in.
Yeah, good.
I'm like, I don't know what it is, but I'm buying it. You know what I mean? I'm like, she said it's good.
Do you know what though? I was saying this. I shouldn't really admit this, but it's true. I was saying that there's a theory that on ads in like ITV and whatnot. If they want to sell something, they use Northerners. And when I was at Virgin, they always recruited people with, accents.
Yeah.
Geordies, Scousers. And people buy from people that they trust, and they generally trust people with a bit of an accent.
I couldn't agree more. There's that warmth, and there's that like sort of that real friendly...
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with Northerners to the point where I've trusted Northerners that I shouldn't have done before.
Same.
Because they feel so warm.
I will always trust a Northerner. I don't know what it is, but especially like, on like the betting ads, they're always Northerners.
I've not noticed this, but now you've said it, I'm going to notice it.
And I feel as though sometimes, and I'm admitting this now, but sometimes if I'm talking about something and I'm like, I really want this to do well, I really believe in this product, but I've got to give it some welly, I'll go more Northern. And John will be like, you sound really... Have you been on the phone to your mum? You sound dead Northern. And I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe. And I think it's because deep down...
Do you want a brew?
Yeah, do you want a brew? Subconsciously, I know that the more Northern I am, the more real I am, the more relatable, the more back to my roots.
There's something that feels more authentic. And I know exactly what you mean, and I'm not sure why, but somebody with a kind of West London accent couldn't sell me a product in the same way. I feel... If they were talking about the product to me, and it's really interesting, but it's true.
You've got to ditch like your phone voice, to
yes,
get that
telephone voice.
And on social as well, a lot of people do chatty stories, right? Mm-hmm. And if someone's putting the phone voice on, I'm bouncing. I can't listen to that.
Yeah.
I need people that are going to talk to me like they're my mate.
And like we're in the same room together.
Yeah.
How do you, because you then have obviously, there's this success, and I know that you've done ranges and edits with big brands. The success that you have then, I suppose, without knowing at the time and without knowing it will go there, like you say, just sharing a blazer or, doing something for the love of it or really enjoying that product or that brand. How do you then sort of bring that influence, sort of take that influence because you have it, and enter that world of entrepreneurship there? How do you say, okay, this here, what I'm doing for these brands, even just as a gesture, how do I take that for myself? How do I build my own business around this? Because I know what I'm doing now, and I know what I love. Yeah. And like you say, you speak to your manager and you want your own business, you want your own brand. How, because when you do it for everyone else and it's such a success, it must be so nerve-wracking trying to sort of meet that same mark for yourself.
I mean, the good news about doing it for yourself is no one really knows behind the scenes if it was good or not. So at least I can pretend. But I do think that, that leverage of working with other brands is key for me. Right. So you'll see quite often that even when I'm doing product launches on my own, if it's a new part of the business, I'll probably do it with an established brand,
Right.
to kind of test the
the
market and not put so much weight on myself financially.
Because it's a risk. So let's talk about, you launched LA Space in 2023.
Yeah, massive risk that was.
But it's always a risk, right? And I say this a lot, when I was at my previous management company, they wanted me to do a baby brand with a big brand and have like a Rochelle baby edit, because the risk then isn't on me. But I was really passionate about, no, this is my own thing. I know what this is. And yes, there's risk, but I want this to be my baby.
Yeah.
I really do. And I was really passionate about that. But of course, if you lean on somebody else's back end and their expertise and them knowing what sells and what they, there's a lot more reward
Yep.
at the front anyway, and way less risk. How did you, because I'm always so fascinated about how the idea come about and what your first steps were at that point, because knowing that it was going to be, like you say, financially, this is your baby. What were those first steps you took to sort of get this off the ground?
My first step really was just talking about it to anyone that would listen.
Right.
To try and gauge what other people would think I should do.
Okay.
What would you do? Mm-hmm. And actually, when we developed the brand, I didn't have a product in mind. I knew I was going to do clothes because I'd always sold clothes. I had an In the Style collection for like 6 years.
Yeah.
So I had a customer ripe and ready. Mm-hmm. I knew what sizes they wore. I knew what they were willing to spend.
And how involved could you be in the style?
As
doing
much
it
as
for
you
another
wanted
brand?
to be.
Okay.
And that was a real luxury for me. But I always held my own team. So I had my own designer, my own garment tech, my own fit model.
Right.
We were a bit of a squad.
Okay.
So every collection I was creating was, I was WhatsApping my designer at like midnight, ideas.
Right. So even though that was not yours, as it were,
It felt like it was.
It felt like it was. So you kind of had that background experience.
It felt like my baby.
Yeah.
And I loved that. That was such a privilege to do that.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of thought I can do this on my own. But what I didn't have any clue about was branding, how I'd position myself, where I would sit in the market, how people would perceive me. Also, there was that kind of the fast fashion thing. Oh, well, you've done fast fashion now, so you can't really level up to premium. So I knew I needed that period I almost needed to step away from making the collections for them and have a bit of a breather.
Right.
Which is what I did. So I took like 18 months to actually work on it. Mm-hmm. And I said to John, like, can we afford to do this? And he was like, well, you can only afford to do what you can afford to lose. So we kind of like pulled a bit of money in the pot. And he was like, well, that's your money. Go on, good luck with that.
Good luck. Yeah. So you almost had to sort of, it's so important if you're doing this together though, as like yourself and John, to have that support, because there can be so many different obstacles that get in the way, first of all, and you might think you're in for a certain amount of money. It's like, I say, it's like renovating a house. You're like, okay, this is how much they've said it's going to cost.
But that's not it.
It's always going to go a little bit over. There'll be a problem somewhere. And that's when it can be quite scary. And like when we talk about this risk that you wouldn't have had in the style, you would instantly at LA Space.
I mean, I made so many poor decisions developing LA Space.
Like what?
All financial poor decisions, because I didn't understand that not everything would fly.
Right.
That some products just don't hit. And, I think Amy spoke about it, and she's really wise, and I should have listened to her at the time, because she always talks about the power of pre-order and about allowing the customer to decide what's going to fly. And since then, we've done that. We've done some pre-order things, and they've flown. So great.
It's such a good, in that clothing space, which I'm not, I do edit, so I don't design. Like I've got an edit with Next, and I piece their bits that that already exist. We don't design anything. But that pre-order strategy for brands like Odd Muse and yourself, it's such a brilliant tool, isn't it?
And it's key, really, to staying afloat, because if you're not that, if you're not solvent, you're not got sitting on loads of cash. And who is sitting on loads of cash? It doesn't matter how much you earn, you're always spending, at the top end, you know what I mean? You just go on better holidays and you buy better cars. I'm always going to be skint. That's my personality type.
Yeah.
So I felt like I struggled to understand that. And John's a finance guy. He was, worked at HSBC for 30 years. That's his comfort zone. But it's not mine. And there was a real tug and pull, and we locked horns a lot in that first year.
Right.
Because I was like, I want to do this. And he's like, but why would you do that? Because you just don't even know how it's going to do. And when he was right, that would really, piss me off. Because I'd be like, oh,
yes.
I really had to learn. It was like being back at school You know,
and
I've had
knowing
to-
what you can realistically play with, because you sound a little bit more like me, where you're like, no, I've got a feeling about this
feeling.
one. And you can't always go on the feeling because, of course, there's cash flow and everything else in between. But sometimes you have that real sort of gut instinct that something's really going to take off.
And some things did, but some things really flopped.
What was the piece for you that really skyrocketed?
The first big one for us was an Anorak that we did,
Okay.
which was kind of practical because it was like great for dog walking. I think we initially shot it in Switzerland in the snow, and it was like a windbreaker. And I thought we booked 300. And then I think when it launched, I was in Venice actually with John. I was sat drinking wine at the Gritty Palace. And we started the launch, and then about a minute later, one of the girls in my team messaged me and went, "It's sold out. It's gone."
Stop.
And I was like, "What? I thought we had 300. Have you not put them all into stock?" She was like, "No, 300 have gone." And we made this executive decision over a bottle of wine to do a pre-order. And I did a very slurred story about you can pre-order the Anoraks. I'll never forget it. And then over the course of that next day, I think we took 100 grand's worth of sales on that Anorak alone. And I was like, flipping out, this is pretty tasty. I could get used to this. Yeah. And the rest of the collection just kind of, slowly shifted. It took months. But that was great for me because that meant I could pay my bills. I could actually pay my staff and my rent and, all the costs related to the business. So John was like, okay, I see where you're going with this now. I get it. Before that, he never really understood what the value was.
Yes. But that's because you're bringing two different worlds together. Someone that's super
Yeah.
creative and kind of wants to take risks, wants to be reactive to a degree.
Yeah.
Someone that's kind of from that finance background.
He's very risk averse anyway. Being an influencer, there's not many overheads. You could literally do it all from your house. I could literally post from bed and it'd cost me my central eating and my sandwich at lunchtime. And so he's gone from understanding that I could make quite a considerable amount of money just sat doing my stories to, hang on, you've got to pay models and shoots and website and SEO.
Yeah.
It's expensive, right?
Yes, of course. You're right. That's the thing about being an influencer.
It's great.
It's brilliant. Like you say, there's no overheads and it actually changes the whole kind of structure of the business when you're going into product, doesn't it?
Because you're like, what we've got to do? We've got to
completely
book what?
different beast.
How much is a fit model? I just want to try someone to try the clothes on while we're doing the fits, and it's like 800 quid. What's she doing? And it's like all these things would just throw me.
But they're so important.
But they're so important.
What does your role look like day to day now at the business?
I wouldn't say that I'm a manager as such. I don't manage day to day what's going on in the office. I definitely lead the decisions in terms of how we market ourselves, what we're designing. Me and my designer Lorian were still WhatsApping at midnight. And I actually took Lorian from my In the Style days.
Wow.
So she was my first hire. So she understands my handwriting. She knows what I like. She even studies what I'm wearing and says you've changed your style slightly. So I think we need to change direction.
Wow.
So that's been good for me. But day to day, because I've not just got LA Space now, they've got other little businesses going along, as you do. My day to days are very random.
Well, let's talk about it because you're earlier this year come Ghost by Lady A, which so explain to me this setup and how this works, because I'm sat here really enjoying it, but how does that work?
I mean, this came about from a very drunken night out where I expressed to my business partner Charlie that I wanted my own rosé. And if you look back at my Instagram, he went all the way down, there's 4,000 photos. Every now and then there's a little cheeky flat layer for 2 glasses of rosé.
It's changed from the coffee.
Yeah, it went straight into rosé. And I think that is I am a rosé drinker. It's a very fundamental part of my lifestyle. I need a glass of wine at the end of the day.
I love that. I love the honesty.
I knew that I wanted to do something with a wine brand. Whispering Angel had never even never looked in my direction. So I was like, okay, they're on lock. I think they're LVMH now anyway.
Right.
So I was like, maybe I need to partner with a rosé brand because I still need an expert to know what they're doing. What should we do kind of thing? And then through Charlie, he made me the introduction with Ben and Elle, who own Lady A. And they kind of loved the idea. I think the cautious element for them was, well, hang on, how can we've got a great rosé that we already do. What are you going to bring to the table?
Yeah.
And so we decided to create an organic version of Lady A and a bit more kind of a premium one that would maybe you'd only have the one bottle because it's a bit more of an investment bottle.
Right. Okay. Got you.
And maybe a bit older market as well. I mean, Lady A is so popular now. It's the Soho House rosé.
It's literally, I was going
So
to
you
say.
see it everywhere. But I imagine a lot of the marketing they've done, and they've got that Gen Z audience, like your Gen Z
Yes.
person is buying that.
Yes.
So I was like, well, let's tackle who's me? What am I drinking? I'm 42, nearly 43. I want something that's a bit grown up. You know, I don't mind spending a little extra cash. And so that's kind of where that came from. And we spent quite a lot of time in Provence. We went to Chateau Lacoste, which is where
How incredible.
the grapes are from. And great, by the way, if you ever get the chance to go to Chateau Lacoste, because it's a massive like haven for
This
art.
is my husband's dream.
Oh, it was just so much. Do you know what? I can't even like underplay it. Like, it was proper fun. We got so drunk. We've had so many drunk nights out in Aix, I think you pronounce it.
All in the
which is-
name of research.
And all in the name of research. And then I just remember tasting this rosé for the first time. And we'd had many iterations of this wine. And I just remember sipping it and being like, we've got it. This is the one. And so that's been, I was like, this is a no-brainer. So it's a kind of a joint venture, really, you know, in terms of financially.
Yeah.
So we're both committed equally. But it's done really well. Our pre-order sales were pretty incredible.
Really?
And I was like, okay, I want something else.
Because it's a different thing. Again, you're testing yourself
Massively.
on what your audience are going to connect with. You know you're going to sell an anorak. You know you're
Yeah.
going to sell a good blazer. You know how that looks for you. But going into
I had no idea.
rosé, alcohol,
I
you
thought
don't
we'd
know.
sell like a couple of bottles. I was really nervous because I really didn't. Also, no one had tasted it. I was
And
like, people
what
are gonna
did that
buy
first
blind.
pre-order look like?
The first pre-order we did, I think we took like 10,000 quid in the first 10 minutes.
What?
And that was without people tasting it.
Gosh.
So that was a bit like, Charlie and I looked at each other like, yeah, okay.
That's
we can
pure
work with it.
trust
It's trust. It's people knowing
that you know rosé.
that I like rosé, that I like the taste of it. I shared a video of John's first reaction because I wanted to get John's first reaction on the rosé because John's like a bit of a legend. He's got good taste buds, like he dresses well, he eats well.
cool.
Everything, he's got
Yeah,
good
yeah,
taste,
yeah.
he's got good art. So I was like, I want you on camera just tasting it for the first time. And I think that really resonated. People were like, well, if John likes it, then he must be all
It
right.
must be good. Nothing to do with you, babe. Just John.
It really is. He is like, I've always said this before, but like, it is the John show. I'm just like the understudy.
You're
Because
the supporting actress.
I really am the supporter.
But it's not stopping there for you because you've got LA Space, we've got Ghost of Lady A, and next month,
Yeah.
I want to hear all about this because this to me is the most...
It's a bit random.
No, it's not. It's the most obvious thing for you. I think about you every morning. That sounded really weird. When I think about watching you every morning, sounds weirder, doing your routine,
Yeah.
skincare is a
Skincare,
big
beauty.
part of that.
All of
Huge.
that, like all that self-care.
Yeah.
Which I'm quite into. Mm-hmm. So what we've decided to do is when we bought the ghost house, people hated the ghost house. Not everyone's cup of tea. It's brutalist. It's not what you'd expect in the Cotswolds.
It's gorgeous. I mean, I've
It's its
seen
own
it.
thing.
No, it's beautiful. It's a work of art.
And that, for me, I was like, do you know what? What I liked about buying that house was that it really cut the wheat from the chaff in terms of there was people that really liked it. They were like, I get this. I get what you're about. I get your taste. And I actually formed new communities from it.
And also, we should say, if anyone's listening and don't know what we're referring to, Ghost House is your home.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And it is like something out of like Architectural Digest.
Yeah,
like,
it's
like
different.
It's so cool. It's a work of art.
Yeah, it's a great house, and I'm so lucky to have it. But that has been the kind of cornerstone of the brand, any brand that I've built. So LA
Really?
Space, the aesthetic for LA Space is quite minimalist.
Yeah.
And so when we bought the house, it's concrete, right? So it's not got a concrete smell, but it's not got a homely smell because there's no carpets. So we
Yeah.
knew we needed to fragrance it, but also it's a massive gaff. So it's like you can't just light a candle and hope.
It's not going to fill the room.
You need loads of candles. And so we employed Azzy Glasser, who is a perfumer, to profile the house and create as a scent for the house.
Oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. I
So
want to
this
do
was
this.
this is where it all began. And she created a fragrance for us called Number 98, which we then called Ghost Number 98. And it was called 98 because it had 98 ingredients in it. And she came and stayed with us for the weekend. She brought a dog. She's a brilliant woman. She creates fragrances for actors to get into character. So like Jude Law, Jonathan, loads of people, like Johnny Depp, loads of people.
That was a thing.
So she's got a good eye for personality and fragrance.
Right.
And she kind of spent time with John, spent time with me. And I remember we've got a cinema room and we were sat in the cinema room at like 2 a.m. She was like, I've got it. I know what the fragrance is going to be. There's a darkness here, but there's also a lot of light, and there's a vulnerability to you, but there's also this, quite sternness about you. And she created a fragrance that suits me and John and our home.
That's so
And
clever.
I'll be honest, it was just personal to us, and I had no intentions of commercialising this fragrance. It was just going to be our thing. It's something to tell people in it, like you show off to the neighbours.
Yeah, I mean, I'm impressed.
I was I think this is great.
Yeah.
But then the more that people would come round, they'd be like, I'll have one of them candles, get me one. And so we were like, we need to put this into production and we need to sell it. So I think our first order was 5,000 units, which is quite a lot.
Yeah.
For someone that's never really sold a candle.
Yeah.
I'm not Joe Malone, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I was like, how's this going to play out? But it just did really, really well. Selfridges wanted it, so they're now stocking it.
Gosh.
And so that fragrance is going to be a kind of a story of its own now. And we've decided to create a brand which I'm calling 98, based on the ingredients. Our first product is going to be a hair mask, because I love a hair mask. That's my jam. And hair masks often are scented. Yeah. And I was like, well, I want one that smells like my house, because it smells great.
Yeah.
So it's just this it's got these green notes, but it's got if you know the fragrance, I'm sure people will be listening that will know it. Go and have a sniff in Selfridges, but it's a great fragrance. Then it lends itself to
so much
hand cream I want to do. So many things I want to do. But I knew I had to start with hair masking, because that's actually a product that I use every day.
Well, like you say, I do, when I think of you, I think that kind of self-care, that skincare, that hair care.
Yeah.
And it's always at that premium level. Like, I feel like I'll invest in something with your approval.
And I'm like, I sound like I'm just sat home like Lady Muck every day doing like my masks and stuff. But I actually don't.
Babe, we're just talking about the three businesses that you're dealing with.
I don't have much time on my hands. So, for example, because I've got a type of alopecia, which is like hair thinning. So over years, my hair will thin and thin. So I have to do everything I can to keep the hair I've got strong. So I do a structuring mask, I do a hydrating mask. I've got about 4 masks on the go at any one time. So when I found the business partners that I've done this with, because again, I've not just done it blind, I've partnered with people that know what they're doing. I was like, can we not just make all these masks? Can we not just do it in one? And then I only have to do one. And they were like, well, yeah, we can see. So the formulations began. This has been about a year or so in the making. But we've come up with a mask that kind of does a lot of things in one go. We're kind of cannibalising ourselves in a way, because most brands want to make coin, right?
You're so right.
They want to get all the different benefits.
No, but to have that one-stop shop, when it comes to masking, you don't want to overcomplicate it, do
and
you?
I don't need to make a fast buck. I've got a day job as an influencer that does me very well. So it was never for me about, I've got to make loads of money with this. I just thought, I'm going to make it. If it doesn't sell, that's fine, because I'll have a limited, lifetime supply
and you
of
love
stock for my hair. Yeah. But I really am quite passionate about it, and I don't know if it might lead to another completely different kind of business.
It's so exciting.
It is really exciting.
And how do you, in terms of the business, how is this one now structured? Because you've got different propositions. Is John in this with you?
John's in everything with me, because he's like my Mr. Finance.
Love it.
But yeah, we have got a new limited company and new, shareholders and whatnot. So everything is quite separate. It's splitting the risk. Because one of my big fears has always been, my biggest money-making moment at the minute is still being a day-to-day influencer. Yeah. Because there's no overheads. But what if one of my other businesses collapses? Is it going to be to the detriment of my, it's going to suck all the cash out of my day job? Yeah. So from anyone listening that runs their own business will know that doing that right is really important.
Absolutely that.
And I'm still kind of learning.
I think it does take time, doesn't it? The structure, everything, particularly and I'm with you where I have lots of different things, you almost kind of want this, a few of the same key people over everything, but actually make sure everything's got its own team, because you don't want to kind of stretch everybody too much and yourself.
Yeah, and they don't know what they're doing. Like, well, hang on, what are we doing now? Like when I told my team that we were launching 98, they were like, well, hang on, is that going to have different packaging? I was like, yeah, it's a different business. It's a completely different brand. And they were like, all right, and you've got to
exactly.
But then they're still involved with the fulfillment. And I love my fulfillment centre. So I was like, I really want to work with them. All my teams in Manchester, because that was the first thing I knew I was going to do everything up north. I was like, if I ever get the chance to own my own business, I'm going to try and recruit.
I might not live there.
Might not live there.
But I'm going to put my baby there. Yeah.
But I tell you what, the drive into Manchester from where I live compared to London is so much nicer.
Oh, of course.
And all those lovely service stations with the McDonald's.
I want to talk to you, before we go on to the rocket round, I want to talk to you about balance in life when you when a big part of your life is being so open with your community and your following? Because obviously being an influencer, yes, of course, we're getting all of our recommendations from you, but we also know you and your life. And I wonder from the outside, how is that when something quite tragic happens in life? So obviously you've shared openly that John's not been very well.
Yeah.
Is that quite a hard thing, that actually sharing everything when it isn't all roses and sort of keeping authentically you, because it's a big thing in your life?
Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, oh no, I can't be arsed today.
Yeah.
This is like heavy. Especially when John's feeling very unwell. At the minute he's doing chemotherapy weekly, so he feels crap. And we spoke about it before we started filming. You know, last week my mum was like, he's slurring his words. Like, you know, you're always worrying.
Of course.
So I'm always on edge.
But then to have a sort of, you know, telling your family stuff and going and even saying to your friends, God, actually, I've not really spoke to you this week. Because we all have it. I've not spoke to you this week because this has been going on. And there might be that one friend that you tell everything to, but everyone else is kind of like, I just need to get on with this week and get through this. How does it, when times aren't so good, having people that you also share everything to, does that feel like, is there a time that it feels like a job?
No, I think some people would say that I've maybe shared too much and now you can't really take it back, right? I've opened the jar and now I can't really stuff it all back in.
Right.
From my perspective, anything that I put out online, I've probably already told the 4 or 5 key people in my life. But beyond that, where I've come a cropper in the last year, I'll be really honest, is that, say, for example, I've got lots of family that I don't see that often, but I see them on Facebook.
Yeah.
And they haven't been told things that have happened until they've seen it on an Instagram post. And they've become offended by that. Because, like, why are you sharing John's gossip to everyone in sundry?
Oh, gosh.
But you've not told us. But actually, my close-knit circle is close. Like, you keep your circle tight, right? So it's like, as long as they know, I couldn't give a toss whoever else knows.
Oh, and that is so hard, like in situations like this when you can't...
Yeah, it's hard. And also, it looks like I'm telling people John's business and he hasn't had an say in it. Like, everything we put out, we write together.
Yeah.
I'm like, he wrote that caption. What are you talking about? So it is difficult. I mean, I'm not saying I've fallen out with my family because I really haven't. But they're the only people that have expressed a kind of dissatisfaction in the last year about how I do my business.
Okay.
They're the only ones that have not really understood it.
Right.
But I would say most of my friends are in the industry as well. I haven't got friends from school anymore. I've got Facebook friends, but they're not my mates.
And also, there's something to be said about, like you say, those close people knowing, but then saying it and then not having to keep saying it and keep talking, you know, reliving it every time. Once it's there, it's there.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, you know, it is what it is. Like, it's not great for John at the minute. So any updates I can give, it makes sense to do it on a main platform where I can just get it out.
And when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm always ready. Yeah. I'm a massive oversharer. I'd share more than I put out.
But do you think that's almost a coping mechanism?
I think so, a little bit. And that, I really believe that the more vulnerable you are, the more powerful you are. Because people don't expect it. Can be quite disarming, I find.
Yes. Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I think sometimes I connect with people when they show me a vulnerability straight away. It's like, all right, I'm going to get on with you because you're not making out you're something you're not. You're keeping it real.
Yeah.
So I need that in a way. And I think sometimes I'm being vulnerable to get it back.
That's so interesting.
And especially online, and I still reply to my DMs. If I've not replied to you multiple times, you've probably pissed me off. You know, when people say, like, she doesn't reply. I'm like, no, it's just you. It's just you, babes. I just don't reply to you. But I do reply to all my messages, so I kind of know what's going on.
Yeah.
And then on a business level, all of my business decisions come from my community. So if I'm chatting to them, you know, even going through alopecia, that's what's now born, you know, the hair mask was born. That, you know, I wouldn't have made a penny if I hadn't had a failure or a flaw.
You're so right. And I think you've got a community and you've got, like you say, like friends that genuine friends that you've made online, but you've also been blessed with bloody good old focus group to help you make these best decisions.
And they'll tell me.
Yeah.
I've got some that'll WhatsApp me, voice note me. Babes, I've just been having thinking about what you're doing with LA Space and I think you need to do that. And if it's a good idea, I take it to the team and we bloody do it.
Love it.
Because usually is a good idea.
Yeah.
And I can't always see the wood for the trees.
And it's so, I mean, whoever has that luxury to talk to customers at that level,
Yeah.
like that doesn't...
And so honest.
Exactly that.
And they will, if I'm honest with them, they'll be honest with me. And it's not all, I don't want people to be yes people. I want people to tell me when it's a bit crap.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
If
Well,
I've done
that's
a
when you
dress
can
that's rubbish,
work on
tell me.
something, right? Exactly. That's when you can correct those mistakes or kind of look at things a little bit differently. Right, I want to do the rocket round now.
I'm nervous.
Don't be nervous. It's quick fire,
don't.
which I actually feel like I say this to every guest. It's quite hard when you like a natter. First one, what do you think are the non-negotiables for launching a business?
Get your finances in order. Be available for it. You're the cheapest asset in some ways for working, right?
Yeah.
So be available to actually do the work.
Yes. Do you know what? That is such a good point. I think that's overlooked.
Massively.
Yeah.
I think so many people are just ideas people, right? Mm-hmm. But you've actually got to put some welly into it.
Yes. At the start, there's no team. It's just you.
It's just you.
When did you first realise that you truly launched? What was that moment that you thought, okay? I mean, with you, there's so many different ways that you've launched, whether that's being an influencer, whether that's LA Space, however that looks.
Probably my Lorna Luxe moment, like my Instagram moment, and having a new identity after being crew.
And what was it? Was there a day that you were like, wow, this is connected?
Yeah, when I saw that people listened to what I had to say and gave me a response to it. When people listen to you, it makes you feel really powerful.
Yes.
So many people get ignored, right? Day to day.
You're so right.
Just want attention. I think that's where so many, trolls and whatnot, that's where they're born because they're not listened to. They just want attention from someone.
Yeah.
And that's when I really understood the power, the Instagram power and that community.
I love that. What's the first thing you do when you wake up and the last thing you do before you go to bed?
First thing I do when I wake up is have a wee. And then check my phone.
Okay.
Last thing I do before I go to bed is
Have a
read my
wee.
Kindle. Yeah, I have a wee and then read my Kindle.
What are you reading at the minute?
I read like erotic thrillers.
Oh,
So I'm reading a book by T.L. Swan. It's quite dirty.
okay.
It's like porn. I call it literature. But, it gets your juices flowing.
That's amazing. You've thrown me now. What's one piece of advice that you wish you hadn't listened to? Sorry, I'm still on literature.
I know. I hadn't listened to.
Yes.
Oh, God. I wish I hadn't listened to all the people when I first started my Instagram saying that I was being a narcissist.
What?
Because I think at the beginning when people didn't understand social, they thought me taking photos of myself all the time was a bit kind of self-indulgent.
Yeah, you're so right. It's probably, like now it's so normal, but at the
Yeah.
time it's probably seen as very vain.
Like,
or...
what is she doing? Why is she sat on the steps taking photos of herself? Yes. And it kind of slowed me down a bit at the beginning.
That's interesting. What, a fear of embarrassment?
Yeah, like, I better not post that.
Because in case
Now
they
I just
think,
post everything.
That's it, girl. That is it. What's one skill that you'd love to learn?
I would love to learn the power of not manifesting, of being able to just be present and sit with thoughts. I'm too chaotic.
Right.
And I kind of want to be more, how's the word? I don't know what the word is, but...
Like present?
Yeah, and almost just sit on my own ideas and ruminate with them rather than be
Okay.
like, right, let's do this, let's do that. I have an idea, I want to make it happen.
Right.
I'm not very good at just being calm.
But is that the entrepreneur in you?
I don't know, but as I'm getting older, I can see it's quite valuable to be calm and I need to slow down a bit.
Okay. I like that. What's one thing that you wish someone had told you before starting your business?
You probably can't afford to do it, but do it anyway.
Okay. And what do you think you would have gained from that? Just knowing that it's all right?
Yeah, and not being so fearful.
Yeah.
LA Space hasn't made a profit. We've never made a penny. And I think 2-3 years down the line, to be sat here, you could see that as a failure, right? But it's not. It's just the start of a very new story to tell.
Exactly that. And knowing that.
Yeah, it's okay to not be... Last time I saw you, I was sat next to the guy that founded Adenola.
Yeah.
And he
God,
was
he's
like,
impressive,
I've
isn't
been
he?
doing this 10 years. He was like, I only really took off 5 years ago. Just to kind of sit on an idea and let it grow.
It's almost like you want someone to manage your expectations.
Massively
bit.
manage it. Not be that... We think overnight success, but it really doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, they say an overnight success takes 10 years.
Okay, so that's good. Got a few
That is apparently that's factual.
That's good to know.
But obviously, a lot of people then learn about it overnight, and you're
Yeah.
like, "No, I've been doing this.
Who's
thing.
she?
Yeah, I've been doing this thing." I love this one. What for you would be the dream collab for your brand?
The dream collab would be to fragrance a car.
Wow.
Because I love cars.
Yes.
I spend a lot of time in my car.
I always see that you love cars.
And I love fragrance. And I always think when I get in my car, you know, when I get my car valeted,
Yeah.
the guy that does mine, he always puts that little...
Tree.
And I always think,
I'm not the tree.
But I always think, I wish I had like a little perfume, like diffuser or something that was, you know, just pumping it out.
Out of the...
And it was my fragrance.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that would be a dream partner. I'd have to do it with a car brand, obviously, like a sexy one.
Oh yeah, if anyone can, you can. That's perfect for you, isn't it? Perfect. What's your dream car brand?
I mean, I drive a 911. I do like my car. Gosh. But I actually live in Gaydon, which is where the Aston Martin factory is.
Right.
So maybe Aston because it's British.
Love that. You're so impressive with cars. I know nothing about cars. All I care about is like what the seats look like.
Yeah, I think the seats and the wheels, like they've got to have nice alloys.
I can see that you're really into this.
Like my alloys are really nice. Yeah. Like when I'm walking up to my car, I'm like, yeah, that's fit.
Do you know what's sad? I wouldn't know the difference between a nice and a nasty alloy. I wouldn't. It's a car to me. It's a car. If you could choose one female figure as a mentor, past or present, who would it be?
Probably someone that's seen a lot, so like the Queen or someone.
Oh, yes.
Because she's got stories to tell. And she's always remained she's passed now, but she was always so stoic. And I'm quite a royalist. I don't think people know that about me.
Are you?
But I'm quite into the royals. I like having a royal family.
Do you?
Yeah.
I think it kind of I think as like, I wonder if my kids would be as passionate about...
I don't think they would.
That's what I wonder.
Is it our era? Because I grew up when...
And our parents, that was like...
And like Princess Diana, and I remember when Princess Diana died, I remember where I was.
Oh, I do. I can remember the conversation I was having, where I was sat. I remember my mum was like hysterically crying.
Yeah, it was like emotional.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like history, so I like going to all the like stately homes and stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Very aspirational.
The Queen. There you go. Each episode, I get our guests to leave a tip.
Okay.
Almost like a really tangible piece of advice that you think a listener could take from you, and I suppose someone at the start of their career looking to maybe emulate what you've achieved in terms of influencing, you know, the businesses. If you could leave a tip that would kind of like embody what you wish you would have known, what would that be?
Probably that, and this goes back to being online. Would I say it to someone's face? If I wouldn't, then don't put it online. Don't put it in writing.
Yeah.
Like, would it be authentically you? Like, would I actually say that to my next door neighbour in a conversation? Then I can, and I think that's with business. Would, you know, we get great ideas. I get lots of brand deals come through. Would I actually buy that? Like, really? Would I be into that?
Yeah.
Why would I make a product that I wouldn't really buy myself? So everything kind of has to centre around what would I do in real life if all this other noise was out of the way?
Yes.
Because it is noisy.
And it's such a like simple idea, but it's so true. Like in terms of like online and the way people talk, like it's so interesting how brave that kind of screen and that keyboard makes people.
I do it myself. I'm like, I would never say that to them in real life.
Yeah.
So I feel like I edit myself a bit more now. But it's important in business.
To kind of have, it's almost like taking a breather, isn't it?
Yeah, which I struggle with, as we've talked about. So it's like, I see the value of it because I know I struggle with it. I have to really be self-aware.
Yes.
And not be so quick to nominate
yeah.
stuff for the sake of it.
Yeah, I get that. That's really good advice, because I think it is just taking a beat and we can all do it.
Yeah, we can. It's actually really easy to do.
It's actually really easy to do. Yes. Take a second.
Shut up. That's my advice.
And then, lastly, I ask everybody this because I absolutely love to know. We talk about being ladies who launch. Mm-hmm. I know that you're a good lady who lunches too.
I am.
I know you are. So when it comes to like a typical lunch hour,
okay,
if you're with your team and you're working, is there a go-to order? Where are you? How does it look?
So very rarely am I with the girls in the office.
Right.
But let's say I am, because I'm going to be there tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get Starbucks.
Right, for lunch?
For lunch.
Okay.
It's the only time I'll have coffee is with them.
Really?
Yeah, that's like my thing. My love language with them is drinking coffee.
I love that.
Because I'm a Diet Coke girl through and through. But I like to look grown up in the office. I'll get a hot drink. And I'll have definitely some kind of like goat's cheese and sweet chilli thing. I like lots of different varieties of flavours. So I'll have that on a sandwich.
Yeah.
But I don't like Pebble Dash bread, and Starbucks insist on using this really healthy,
Pebble Dash
like
bread
healthy
is?
bread, you know, with all the nuts
Oh,
and the seeds.
okay, got you.
So I'm not into that. I like white bread. I mean, I'm like a Warburton's toasty loaf girl.
Nice.
But yeah, it's hard to get that from the shops.
Okay, so we're going some sort of cheesy...
Cheesy with a bit of chilli, maybe a bit of rocket.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Like quite chic,
all the flavours.
but all the flavours.
I love that. I feel like we have covered off so much in this, from goat cheese to like
And wine.
difficult times to wine. We've had it all. Thank you so much. I've
you.
loved it. Thank you for coming here, and thanks for bringing us the rosé.
And we've still got some left.
I think I'm ready. Look, I'm dry now. I'm dry. Thank you so much.
Thank
Loved
you.
it. Don't forget to follow us on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts to make sure you don't miss out, because next time we're going to be joined by another incredible lady who launched. If, like me, you're a watcher, follow us on YouTube, and please don't forget to like and subscribe.